Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to share my guest with you today. I'm just going to read some of your bio. How does that sound? Okay, I'm teasing you people. You're going to have to listen to the other side of the intro to find out who my super secret guest is today.
Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find Soul-u-tions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
All right, so this is a very famous Augustan, a woman who is like, I'm just amazed by. So, for 35 years, you've covered news in the Augusta area, writing for publications such as the Augusta Chronicle, Augusta Magazine, Columbia County Magazine, and Fort Gordon's The Signal newspaper. Most recently, you served as the managing editor of the Augusta Press. Augusta is your hometown, and you are now on a new mission. You have started something called Augusta Good News. And let's just talk about your book. You're an author of 6. How many books? 7?
14.
14 books.
Something like that, yeah.
You're a movie star?
Yeah. I have an IMDb page. That's just
You do.
Yeah.
You do have an IMDb
funny.
page. And you were the recipient, and this was a couple of years back, of the Augusta Arts Council Award of the Media winner. And I want to read what Stephen Yules wrote about you, because it's really good.
It made me cry
It
the
made
first
you
time
cry.
I read it. Yeah.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah.
There is nobody, present company included. Now, those are Stephen's words, and I'll take them as my own too, since I'm reading them, that truly understands the sense of community that runs through Augusta's creative culture as completely as the Augusta Chronicle reporter and columnist at that time. And was it 2018?
18. Right.
2018's media winner, Charmain Z. Not only is she a writer without peer, but she truly believes that by exposing readers to what is happening in the community, she can improve the quality of life. It's a role she takes seriously, and that I believe, those are Stephen's words, but I'm also going to say I believe, because I do believe it, has allowed her to avoid the natural cynicism that often infects journalism. She is the rare writer that, while remaining clear and unbiased, still manages, through the simple act of telling stories, to broaden the horizons of an entire community. So, friends in podcast land, I want to introduce you to my friend Charmain Z. Beckett. We're both crying now.
Yeah. I have no words.
Well, I think so. You and I have known each other since.
Do we have to mention more years than we want to talk about?
We'll just say elementary school.
First grade.
First grade. We have known each other since the first grade. We went to school 1st through 12th grade together. And Charmain has been a beautiful writer the entire time, and you have loved the written word and language all of that time. And you've also pushed, I think you've had a vision of what life could be your entire life from a very young age. I mean, I think we've talked about it before. When we were in 7th and 8th grade, there was a desire to go ahead, tell everybody.
I've always thought that, think about that. I just never could understand why not everybody could do the things that other people could do. You know, there've always been barriers, especially with women and other groups, that only certain people were allowed to do things like play football.
This is
in the 1970s. It was unheard of for a girl to think about playing football. And so I went to a football meeting with the boys, and I had no idea what kind of stir I had created. I didn't.
You were in the 7th grade.
I was in 7th grade. Yeah. And my dad was like, "You're too pretty to play football. But if you want to go to the meeting, I will let you go." I'm like, okay. No, I did not play football, but I don't know. I've always thought about the underdog and speaking out for somebody who maybe couldn't speak for themselves.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
I think so. I mean, you've always not been afraid to question the way things were done, to think of better ways to do things. Not just because they've been done a certain way for a period of time doesn't mean that things should not be revisited,
right,
thought through again, to be,
So, I mean, that's probably the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Is that for years, 35, if it bleeds, it leads. And working in the interim between the Augusta Chronicle and what I'm doing now, I was under that whole mentality of the breaking news and the horrible things that are happening in Augusta. And it was a soul-crushing thing because at the Augusta Chronicle, I dealt with feature stories in arts and entertainment and faith and people. And that's what I enjoyed, because I've just got this belief that if we share each other's stories, like Stephen said, and how he summed me up so perfectly, I don't know, it was almost like somebody looking into your soul when he wrote those words. But if we share our stories with each other, then that tears down walls.
Yes.
So, I mean, I've written stories about hundreds, maybe thousands of people in 35 years probably, and met some incredible people from all ages, different races, different thought processes, different political backgrounds. And yet if you can there's some kind of common ground that we can reach with every person.
Yes.
We're all human beings, and we may be from different countries, different walks of life, but there's one place that we could come together. And if we can come together and break bread together, have coffee together, just talk, then we could make this world a better place. And so you don't stay in journalism for 35 years unless you still have this altruistic view of life and this, I don't want to say Pollyanna, but the whole thing that he said, that not having that jaded, biased, that thing, that cynical thing. I think there is a little bit of cynical cynicism in me, but I still believe that at the heart of people, there's good.
Yes.
And that we can come over those barriers. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I've lived in Augusta all my life and I've seen barriers, and people focus on those barriers so many times when it's like, could we just focus on what we have in common? And when you talk to those people who maybe are on the other side of your table, and they have, I mean, I've had those conversations with people that we're not alike in gender or in ethnic representation or sexual orientation or whatever, but we have come together, and I could get them agree with me to say, if I can learn more about your story, we could probably at least, if not be, maybe we wouldn't be best friends, but we could be acquaintances, and we could talk cordially and get along together and make Augusta a better place. We could work alongside of each other. And they all look at me and they shake their heads. Yes. It's
that is so amazing.
Because we're people.
We are.
We're people. And at the end of the day, that person has people who love them. They love their people. And I mean, when you come down to it, that's what it's all about.
Yes, that is what it's all about. It's interesting. So in my new career as a life coach, that idea of, all right, the lazy Susan of my brain is now coming back around. I totally lost that train of thought. I was like, oh, yes. If it bleeds, it leads. And I actually took a news fast, and mostly from video news, not written news, but a news fast from video news back. Well, Turner and I had a car accident in Atlanta back in the 90s, and he was homebound for over 3 months and broken 7 vertebrae. And I took a leave of absence from practicing law to take care of him. And there was a writer at the time, a guy, Dr. Andrew Weil, who had said you should take a news fast once every 6 months or something, just like a cleanse from the news. But what he meant was if it bleeds, it leads news. Mm-hmm. And so when Brennan was diagnosed with leukemia, I remember distinctly because it was Obama's first inauguration day. And so there was a lot of chatter out and about, and you had the CNN news and the Fox News. You had these different camps that were building up. And so we made this decision. I said, I'm going to go on a news fast, just straight up news fast. I will read the news, but I'm not going to watch the news or have it on television or even have it on the radio listening. So it was funny because Turner at the time was making fun of me. He would talk to other people and he would say, well, Tara just depends on other people to tell her the news and she's this and that. And I said, no, I'm just going to be intentional about the news that I consume. And given that we're in this specific environment, in this specific arena, there's only so much I could handle. From an emotional standpoint, I needed to make sure that I was buoyed and that I stayed up. And so you do get all the news. I mean, it does come to you because we're humans. We share our stories, right? Or we share the news orally. But so we have never had the news on in our home ever since. So our children did not grow up like with television news. And we were just watching on Netflix. There's a Boston Marathon, the Boston Marathon shooter that's on Netflix now. And there was a study done out of Stanford after that shooting that said people who had watched the video of that news, on average, the average person had seen it more than 6 times. They recorded more levels of stress in their body than someone who had actually been there. And so I think as part of like our health, what you are doing is so important, giving this other voice to the quote unquote good news.
Yeah. I mean, as a news person, I do believe that covering our government, especially
very
local,
important.
Especially local, and those things are important. But I went through a phase when the Columbine shootings happened.
Yes.
And when those happened, Denver had 2 newspapers. One was like the daily in the afternoon or something anyway, so they were competing and they would always try to one-up each other. So for a year, I was immersed in this whole thing of, I could tell you all kinds of stories from what I read about the 2 boys who did that,
right,
and the aftermath and the victims and the victim family and all of the evidence and all of that, just so much. And it consumed me. And finally in 2012, we cut cable because there had been all these other shootings after that. And I just came to a place where it's like, there's nothing that I can personally do
yes,
in this situation. And if feeding on all of this is going to make me it's going to mess with my mental health. And I did find out that after I left the Augusta Press, because I was dealing with depression and some other things that I really don't want to talk about. But mentally it was very hard. And I found out that there is such a thing as PTSD for journalists.
Yes.
It's this secondhand thing, like secondhand smoke. You know, you're consuming it. There were emails that if I got an email from Mark Bowen or Eric Abdullah, something inside of me was like, oh no, you know, I've got to write about a shooting or a death of some kind, because Mark Bowen is Augusta's coroner and Eric Abdullah is in Aiken County with the sheriff's department. And I just knew those people don't contact us unless it's bad. Yeah. And the final thing though was reading this child abuse case, because I was a copy editor too. I read everybody's stories when they came in, and there had been this 12-year-old boy whose his mother in this situation was on trial for his death. And for 2 days I had read how his parents had basically tortured and killed this child. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not reading this again. I'm just not going to read it. I can't, because it is affecting me mentally and emotionally, and I can't. The child is gone. I can't do anything. I can't bring him back. I'm done. Somebody else has reported it. Whatever she's written is fine. There's typos. I'm sorry.
No. Well, you know, one of the interesting things I think that brings to mind for me is, and I think there comes this ability, this capacity to discern what is your gift to give the world and what isn't your gift to give the world. The ability to discern, like, what is the arena that I have been put in, and then how do I contribute to that arena, trusting that in the arena, if we take child abuse for situation, there are people who are in that arena.
And they're trained for that.
And they're trained for that. And there are advocates of that who are informing our society on it and moving that forward. Right. Like, I feel that way about childhood cancer. Like, that's an arena that my family's been put in. It's a place that we can move the needle for the society as a whole. I think what your gift is this connection, this relationship building. What you're talking about is this ability to find common ground and to present a profile of someone as a human being that isn't their ideologies or the clubs that they're a part of or their political leanings one way or another. You're like, this is a human being, right? Who is contributing to life in a way that I find inspiring, and I think the story is worth sharing with other people. And I think that the thousands, millions of little fires that you light by just sharing the cumulative impact of story by story by story, that you've never given up on that part of humanity, I think is an incredible contribution. But it does come with making a choice, like what you're saying. Like, I found my mental health was being impacted by covering this kind of news, which means you couldn't do that thing that you do so well and that society needs that society needs. Right.
You mentioned the books. So I've spoken to authors, book clubs and other things before, and people have asked me, so did you always want to be a writer? And my response is, no, I never wanted to be a writer. I had to be. It was something that I had to do. And it's, some people do it for fun. I don't know that it's fun.
Torture is kind of.
I mean, sometimes it is fun. I like. I can't remember who the author was. She's like, I don't like writing. I like having written. So when it's done, it's like, oh wow, that's really good. I like that part. But it was just something inside of me that I had to do, that had to come out, that I had to express myself. And so in a way, writing is therapy. There's a lot of therapy that goes on because I do my creative writing and I'm able to express emotions and stuff like that. But when I write a story and somebody says, oh, I read that story and it made me cry. And it wasn't because of the subject matter of it being bleeding and leading. It was that it touched a part of their heart because they saw maybe something of themselves in that other person, or their story inspired them, or something like that. That's when I know I've done a really good job, is when somebody tells me that it brought tears to my eyes, or, I cried. Yeah.
That's when you know you're living your purpose. At the previous podcast before you got in here that I recorded is, it's about like why people always say like, wow, what's a life coach and why would you do it? But I talk about the hero's journey in that, and that there's a call, like in the mythology, right, in the literature, right, there's this common element that you're, you being the hero of your own journey, and I'm the hero of mine, and I always tease David behind the curtain as the hero. But I was trying to describe what that call is, and you're describing it just perfectly. I had to. I didn't have a choice. There was a call. You could have turned that call down. It was just have kept getting louder in you.
Yeah, that's when I knew it was time for me to transition to something else. Is I didn't have time to write, and I knew that if it ever came to that place, that was my sign that I had to go.
Interesting.
Because writing of what it does, that whole process of the therapy of it, meeting the people and translating it and boiling it down and putting it out there. Yeah. It's therapeutic for me. It really is.
All right. I want to talk about this because I think this is important for people to hear. And I think they can be inspired by your story, which is the pivot that you have made. The age of, 55 or
56.
56. Yeah. We're 56 now, but you made this decision to, what is your discernment process? Like you knew that it was time to make a change for you. And I think there are a lot of people who wonder about that at this point in their lives. Like, should I stay where I am, or should I move on to something else? And especially when that something else is starting something, like it's like having a baby. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, in a way it is. Well, part of it is listening to the people who love you the most.
Okay.
Because my mother, my brother, and my husband were all probably ready to do an intervention because they could see what it was doing to me. Mm-hmm. And especially my mother, she's one of those, and my husband, both of them are like, well, if you have a job, you better, and you want to go to something else, you better have that job lined up. You give your 2 weeks notice, you make all these things happen. And when I gave my 2 weeks notice, I didn't have a job. I didn't know. I had an idea. And what sold me on the idea was when I looked at my husband and I said, do you really think that I can do this? And he looked at me without flinching or blinking or anything and said, I know you can. And when he said that, it was like, okay, I'm going to step out and do this because, I had I do have faith. Sometimes you wonder.
You're normal.
Sometimes you wonder when you're like, oh yes, great faith. And then you go, no, there was no faith there in that. But anyway, I had this conversation with God one day. I was like, you're giving me this idea to do this new thing. And you do realize that most people my age are talking about retiring in a couple of years. And I heard very clearly in my head, well, God asked Moses to deliver the children of Israel when he was 80. So at least you're not thinking about this when you're 80. And then my mother's like, we know Colonel Sanders was 77 when he started frying chicken. I was like, okay.
So basically, in your youth, you came up with this wild, crazy idea.
Yeah, you're still young. I was with a couple of ladies the other day, and I was actually yesterday, and we were talking about my age, and they're like, "Oh, I remember when I was in my 50s." And I was like, "Okay, you're still young.
You're still young."
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, got another 25, 30 years. I guess I am.
You are. I can remember my mother, she was the executive director at the Augusta Arts Council, and she decided to go into real estate. She was 57 when she did that. And I think that's really important to have role models that you can make a jump at this point in time in your life.
Yeah.
And go all in. And which is what I did when I left the law to go into coaching. I'm like, gosh, I could go back to practicing law, but this is the thing that I feel really called to do. And I think it's important for our young people to see, be it our children or other young people, to see that the world is so different than I think it was when you and I got out of college, you know?
Yeah. I mean, who would have thought, even when, COVID came and they let a bunch of people go at the Chronicle, and that's kind of where I ended up out, was with all the turmoil with COVID. Even then, the idea of a digital newspaper, and then of course there's the other project that I'm working on, and that was the main thing, is that other project. But I never would have thought, and going through what I went through at the Augusta Press was very good, because it showed me what was on the inside of me.
Yes.
And it exposed all the knowledge that somebody called it like institutional knowledge, that was on the inside of me. And I had no idea what really was there until I went through being the managing editor there and seeing, I know more than I thought I knew. I am more capable than I realized. And sometimes you go through situations and it shows you. And so that is what gave me kind of the belief that, well, I got my husband telling me I could do this, and why not?
Why not?
So I built my own website. But really, when I left the Augusta Press, I had no idea I was going to start Augusta Good News. No idea. We went on a cruise. It was like
your happy place, by the way.
Yeah,
this
my
is
happy
Charmain's
place.
Happy place.
And that the water was, I could see it in the back. I was in the back of the ship, and the water and the waves, and I could hear that song from Frozen about let it go.
Let it go.
And it was going, and it was like, because there's something about when you leave the shore, and 7 days later you come back. Your mind has done this reset, and everything. What's in the past is in the past. You really have that. I don't know how to describe it.
It's like almost like a sliding doors moment, or you cross that threshold from one place. You were one person when you left, and you're another
totally
when you
different.
return.
It's just, it seems like more time has passed in a way that when you come back, and those things that were bothering you are really distant. I don't know. I guess that's just what a good vacation does. I don't know. So yeah, but on the ship, I was just thinking, now how do I get from this point to where I really want to be? And it was like, well, what do you know how to do? I know how to write, and I interview people, and I have those skills. So keep doing that. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, build a website. I don't think I know how to do that. Well, it's actually, to build a preliminary one, it's not as hard as people might think, because I did it and I didn't know what I was doing. So it's being worked on to 2.0 right now. No, I'm not doing that, but I at least got it off the ground. Sometimes you just have to start something.
You just have to start something.
The whole thing, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Just start doing what you know how to do. You know how to do this, start it. Build a website. Okay, built a website. I'd worked in WordPress when I was at the Augusta Press. I knew how to use that platform. I knew how to do that. Okay, so I did. And then Facebook, I know how to do social media. That's how it all came.
That's how it all came. Well, it's back to that hero's journey. One of the things that I talked about in that previous podcast. So for the listeners, I was like, oh, this is just such a good 1-2 combo, that and this with you, because what you're describing is the obstacles that the hero, you answer the call, and then every human has obstacles that they will meet along the way. And it isn't a happily ever after life. Like, we have been conditioned and socialized to think that, oh yes, you're going to do all this, you're going to live happily ever after. But no, you're going to receive a call, and then you're going to have obstacles along the way. And, that obstacle you're talking about at COVID, when you were at the Chronicle, there was an obstacle there you had to get through. And then that took you to the Augusta Press. And then that you really met yourself through the obstacles that were presented there. And I loved your language. Like, I became more of who I am. You know, I met myself there. And in leaving that, doing this inventory of the things that you knew how to do and that you knew how to do well, and that very sage advice of just starting, because that holds so many people back. So many of my clients are just like, they want everything tied up in a pretty bow before they start. And that's not the creative journey. And I think probably, I wanted to ask you this question because my background as a dancer and an artist, writing, not like your really serious professional creativity in your writing, but when you understand a creative process, then to take this entrepreneurial adventure is very much applying that same creative process to business. Yeah.
I have a friend who kind of walked me through this journey. And of course we had coffee that one day. And,
we did.
And you helped me. I think sometimes we know what we're supposed to do, and we just want somebody to to say, yes, that's what you're supposed to do. But I did have a friend, and she said, you know, you've been preparing for this point in your life all your life.
Oh, I love that.
And because everything that you've done has led you to this place. So that's when you get to that place and you're like, okay, you know, I've been building for this
my entire life. Yeah. And you've built up the knowledge and the wisdom and the know-how to do all of that. You aren't just starting from the beginning.
Right. And that was the one thing, the Facebook meme. Yeah. You're not starting over. You're starting from experience.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And it showed up a few times, and it's like, okay, I like that.
I like that too.
You're starting from experience.
Well, even Dante harken back to our Aquanastate Charmain, we had to read. You know, he starts in the middle of the woods, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting. Also, being in midlife, you're starting with experience,
right?
Okay, so David just gave us the time sign. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay, 4 minutes.
I want you to talk about this other project that you're working on.
Okay. So when is this going to come out?
I don't know.
Okay.
We can, whenever you want it to.
So when
several weeks, though.
Well, when I was in the process of trying to figure out my life a year ago, life is totally different from then. I woke up on a Sunday morning and I could see in my head a magazine. I just saw a picture in my head. And I also saw the name of it, and it was Inspiring Women of Augusta. And my brother told me that name was too long. But I've been calling it that for a year. So what I told him last night, and he's like, oh, that is really smart. It's Inspiring Women of Augusta.
Oh.
So then that way.
So now this is pork chop.
It is. He said, because a magazine has to have he said, that's a tagline. He said, it has to have one word. It's just one word.
One word.
You know, glamour, bizarre, those kind of things. Anyway, so this is, it's a hyper-local magazine. Everything in here will be about women in Augusta, women who've overcome, just issues like we graduated with somebody who is a Black female who went to West Point and graduated from there, went into the Army, became a physician. Then because of a medical condition, she lost part of her leg. And now she is a national wheelchair sports gold medalist.
I know, it's so amazing.
And we had a great conversation about mental health and, about how sports is actually the thing that grounds her. So there will be 5 women featured in each of the issues, and it's going to be every 2 months that it comes out. So the first issue is November, December. I'll have a woman in the arts, a woman in business, a woman who's either in high school or college, someone who is just charitable work, philanthropy, something like that, working with the nonprofits, and a woman in business. I think I said all 5. So so that's my next thing. And I just, to build up to this level, Augusta Good News will always exist. But it has helped build up just what we're doing as far as good news. And it's not just me anymore at Augusta Good News. I have several people working with me, which is amazing.
Amazing.
So,
Well, I just want to go back to the first grade. That we would be here together right now. And even that meeting in the 7th grade, that sense of advocacy, just attending the meeting, just inspiring women of Augusta. I mean, Charmain, you are the, epitome of an inspiring woman in Augusta. And who thinks of the whole community, that you report on the whole community, and you just are a real gift to Augusta. And I have, I don't know why I've been lucky enough to be a witness to so much of what you've done in your life, but I am grateful that I've been put in that position to be able to watch that. It makes me very happy, and fills me with just a sense of confidence in our continued humanity and the continued the relationships that we all share and build together, and that optimism that you have. Would you please share with people how they can support Good News Augusta, where they can subscribe, where they can find it, and then also the Inspiring Women of Augusta?
So I don't have like subscriptions,
right.
There's a lot of information that I don't want a paywall to be a barrier. If I do a story that could benefit somebody and they don't have $7.99 a month,
right.
I don't want to stand in the way of that. People can donate actually, or be like a monthly supporter,
right.
or advertisers. It's augustagoodnews.com. I don't have a website yet for the magazine, but the advertisers will get several copies. And when the issue comes out, I will have a list on the website of where you can pick up the magazine.
Okay.
So
if they want to contact you, go to augustagoodnews.com.
Right. And my email address is Charmain, CHARMAIN, at augustagoodnews.com. There's no E on the end of my name. So, yeah.
I know I always have to say there's no P in Simkins.
Yeah.
It's funny how people do. Mm-hmm. Well, I could talk to you forever. And we went to see Hamilton together with our friend Lisa, who you're going to feature in this first edition of the magazine. And I just remember when we went to lunch that day, you talking about having been so impacted by that Scouts creed. And I just...
I was a Girl Scout for 12 years. Well, 11 of my 12 years of school. And I met my husband at Girl Scout camp. He was a lifeguard and I was a counselor. So Girl Scouts, Girl Scouts is very important in my life. But when we would go camping when I was in middle school or whatever, I had a leader, and she always said that we leave things better than when we found them. So if we made a campfire or whatever, you made sure that when you left, there was no trace of you, and try to leave things better. And I think that that's the measure of true success, is if we can leave people better than we found them. Yes. And I have people that I've worked with, they're like, I didn't really have a problem. I really wasn't calling about work. I just wanted to talk to you because I felt better after I talked to you.
That's amazing. And that's enough. And so if you're listening, just want you to know that that's just a remarkable thing about being human and alive and relationships and together. And just thinking about your life, how do I want to leave this better than I came? Let that be your contribution to the world. So you know where to find Charmain at augustagoodnews.com. And you can find me at Tara Simkins, SIMKINS, no P.com, and hit work with me if you want to do something cool with your life like Charmain has done and you need a little help and guidance because you're not married to her husband. Who says go for it. Well, thank you, everybody. And thanks, David, for catching us on the podcast world and recording us at Good Up Productions. Until next time, be well.
I ain't done living the life I'm meant to lead. And I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibility.